You're listening to the Natural Mother Podcast. I'm Jessica, founder of naturalmothernetwork.com.
And I'm Candace, a birth and postpartum doula. We're sisters and moms who believe all mothers deserve a doula's support beyond just pregnancy and birth.
Consider us your go-to source for information, encouragement, and community. Welcome to the podcast today, everyone. This is your host, Jessica. And today on the program, we have Lorine Dolby Hoffer. She is a big change facilitator and a certified body-mind coach. She is fascinated with the body-mind connection and has been since 13 years old. Lorine comes from a background of massage, education, psychology, and entrepreneurship. She loves helping you learn and understand the language of your body so that you can ditch stress patterns that keep you stuck and the headaches and back pains that go with them. She likes to help people reconnect with themselves, their partners, kids, and wake up feeling rested, confident, empowered, and ready to own your day. Lori loves to laugh, curse, explore nature, hang out with her insightful daughter, get to the good stuff in connected conversations, and notice beauty in the everyday. Described as having both fierce compassion and fierce independence, she'll hold space for you and hold you accountable to the big changes you're ready to claim. And today we are going to be talking with Lori about communication and connection in relation to our preteens and our teenagers. I think that often gets overlooked. So excited to have you here, Lori. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Jessica. I'm so excited to be here with you today.
I don't know if it's a program or a podcast or if it's both, but
it's whatever it is, right? Yeah. We're just happy to be here.
I know.
And happy to curse together.
Yes, indeed. And I'm part pirate. It's not a mystery to anyone who knows me. And I'm happy to have a fellow pirate on the program. This will be fun, everybody. Put us on your headphones because there might be little ones in the room.
Right. This is the headphones version. You know, we'll try to control ourselves and you just don't know what'll come out.
You never know. I've known you for lots of years. I remember helping you find a lactation consultant when your only child was a baby. And how old is she now?
Yeah, she is 14 and a half. So I think we met even before she was born, right? So we've probably known each other 15 years at this point.
I know. Tell us a little bit about you and your daughter. And
as you mentioned, right, my background is in massage and education and psychology. I've been an entrepreneur. I've had my own business for 24 years. It started with massage therapy. And I always realized that even with massage, that what we were really doing was my whole goal was to really help people learn the language of their body and understand what their body had to tell them. Because so often people tend to hold like their emotions physically, and then that shows up as pain and stress in the body. So it's really like this unfelt emotion, unacknowledged emotion that's showing up as pain and stress in the body. So I've been doing it for years, and I always felt like there had to be a way to serve people more deeply. And really for me to be able to serve people, like a wider number of people, when I'm doing massage, I'm limited to seeing people one-on-one in person. And so I found this body-mind coaching program with Laura Wick. When I discovered it, I was like, oh my God, this is what I've been saying for years. I had always thought that like an amazing business model would be having like massage and therapy together, but there's all kinds of ethical, considerations with that. And when I found this coaching program, I was like, holy shit, there we go. Like, this is what I've been talking about. Right. Can't help myself. Right. Headphones in, people. So I was like, I was like, this is what I've been talking about. So I started adding this coach officially. The thing was, Jessica, I had been coaching my clients in my practice for years without really claiming it or calling it that. And so by bringing this in, it really created a more defined role around it and with sort of like a beginning and an end. So that's what I really love about it. And so since the pandemic hit, where I am in the DC area, numbers are pretty high. We have essentially, been home for a year. It's a really dense population, et cetera. So not a lot of out and about. Massage did not feel good to me to do. So I've really been focusing on coaching for the past year and a half. and growing that. And a piece of that that really speaks to me is working with kids. My background, again, I have this education background in early ed, and I love kids. And I think that they're often highly underestimated and overlooked for all they have to offer to the world in multiple ways. And one of the things I've noticed, and one of the things I noticed locally within like my mom's groups and groups that I'm part of, is that people say things like, I mean, you know, I know I really need to talk to my kids, but I don't know how. Or you'll hear people say like, you've got to talk to your kids about these things, but nobody ever really gives guidance, or more importantly, sort of like building blocks and like the understanding of what that might look like. It's kind of like when people say, you've got to take care of your body, but nobody really tells you how to understand your body and understand the language it's speaking so that you know what it needs. And so to me, all of those things really go together.
I couldn't agree more. I know that with my parents' generation, and likely your parents are in the same generation as mine, there wasn't a lot of talking going on, especially with subjects that were really big and scary. And
oh my gosh, so much so. Yeah.
We were left to just navigate it all ourselves, or
100%.
with our peers, which is not always the best place to go for advice or information. And we didn't have the internet when we were teenagers. And now our kids have the internet. They have the World Wide Web, and they have time on the school bus. And that is not where I want my kids.
They have access to all of these things.
Yeah.
100%. Sex ed for me was literally the book, How Babies Are Made, left on the low shelf of the bookshelf.
Yeah.
And like nobody ever talked to me about, you know, about things like sex or my body or puberty or any of these things. You know, my first bras were like the hand-me-down bras from my older sisters that were like jammed in the back of the linen closet.
Right.
You know, did they fit? Probably not. Like nobody talked about it. My family was not super communicative in general. And when it tended to be indirect communication. And so really in my own life and in my own parenting, a really big piece of that for me has always been I refer to it as change the narrative, right? Like change the stories and really break the patterns of, you know, the sort of generational things before us, and really educate my daughter so that she can approach her own life from a point of education and understanding of her own body and other people's bodies in all ways, right? Not just in like a sex kind of way or a puberty kind of way, but like the whole body. You know, our body is made of not only the physical parts, but all the emotional and mental parts as well. And, you know, really come at it from a point of like education and understanding, because I feel like that is where big change is going to happen in regards to the conversations that we have and interactions that we have in the world.
Yeah. And this is how I approach conversations with both my son, who is 11 and a half, and my daughter, who is 12 and a half, and always have. I remember when I was, I don't know, 9, maybe, when I was a kid, and I was at the grocery store with my mom. It was just her and I, and she bought tampons. She grabbed them off the shelf, put them in the cart, kind of hid them under some stuff. And I said, and I remember saying, what are those for? And I had already seen them under the bathroom cabinet. And she said, oh, you'll know when you're old enough. So totally just brushed me off. And I remember being like,
right,
you know, a little hurt or a little put off, like, oh, apparently there's things we can't talk about, which didn't help open communication for anything else. That was
like a wall was built immediately. And you were 8 or 9, you said, right?
I was young. Yeah. It was
like already those walls are there. Like we don't talk about that.
I want to say like the maturation program at school is where I learned all that I learned. And I think that was in 5th grade and I was 10. So this was before that by a long shot. And I knew from then, I mean, even that young, that was not how I was going to raise my kids. And Eliza and Everett have known about menstruation and PMS and cramps and sex and all of that since they could ask questions.
Yeah. And one of the things I love about talking about that stuff with kids is when you approach it from a place of pure curiosity. And to me, that is a huge piece of talking with kids, with youth, even with, you know, with teens, with anybody really. When you approach it from this place of curiosity, you have this incredible opportunity to hear what their perspectives are before you ever even give them the answer. And so like an example of that is, I remember when my daughter asked about, we had talked sort of in stages about, she's like, how does the baby get in the belly? Well, a sperm meets an egg and this is what happens. Cool. So she asked a question, I answered that question. And then some while later she came back, well, how does the sperm get into the egg? And I asked her, that's a great question. What do you think? If you had to guess, how do you think it gets there? And she was like, well, I don't know, maybe like a sneeze and it comes out of the eye and then it goes over. And I was like, that is, oh my gosh. I was like, that's a great answer. And it's kind of like a sneeze. You know how when you sneeze, stuff comes out of your nose? I was like, it's kind of like a sneeze that comes out of a penis. And she's like, oh, because honestly, let's face it, that's what it that's what it is.
Feel the same too.
Yeah, right. It's this, and then we talked about, and that's not always how it happens. There's these different ways, but it was just very, it's very matter of fact. And, I know that you're the same way. It's very matter of fact and like factual and sort of like answer the questions that's asked and, use it as a place of education. And more importantly, use it as a place of normalizing. Because like these things are all so normal and we're so busy with, trying to avoid subjects that we're just building all kinds of walls around ourselves and others about really ever like fully connecting, not only with other people, but honestly, fully connecting with ourselves. The more walls we build around ourselves, the more we keep ourselves from connecting with ourselves too.
One of the things that keeps moms or even dads from talking about these subjects with their kids is the fear of messing it up or the fear of giving too much information. And what I've always said to parents in our forum is, if your child is asking, answer. It's time.
They're ready.
Yeah. Period. And you can answer
100%.
We don't have to say it's the birds and the bees. Let's stop beating around the bush here. We know where the birds and the bees got all of us. I was pregnant at 17. So, let's
say penis and vagina, people. That's what they are.
Let's use the correct terminology. Let's tell them how it goes. You don't have to give too much information. They will come back to you. If you answer them honestly, truthfully, and simply, they will come back when they have the next question. It doesn't have to be a 3-hour conversation.
No, you can answer the question that's asked and then they'll process it. Like you'll see and they'll be like, okay, right? You answer the question that's asked and they're like, okay. And then at some other time, when their next stage of readiness is and their curiosity is there, you're going to be who they come to. Right. And frankly, just like you're talking about, I would much rather that my daughter come to me for her questions about all of these things than online or from her friends who I guarantee you are not as, do not have parents who are likely explaining to them or do not have the same level of education as my daughter does at this point, or magazines or wherever else, people are searching stuff out.
Right. And this doesn't just have to do with having the sex talk. It's everything.
Not at all.
Relationships, friendships, drugs, school, not excelling in math, excelling in science. It's endless. We have been talking about sex because that is often one of the most difficult conversations, but it does not have to be. None of them have to be.
Not at all. No. And it really is about just creating the real sort of benefit and work is in creating these trusting, connected relationships before shit gets real, right? Like before the crises hit, so that you are already a safe place to come to. There's already this base, of a feeling of safety and respect and feeling seen and heard, so that when stuff gets tough, when these questions come up, then they're like, I know exactly who to go to. And it's, it's this adult in my life, whether you're a parent, guardian, whatever you are to these kids, right? Like you're their first person that they come to.
And what a blessing that is. I know my daughter has seen, on YouTube a couple of questionable things, and she will immediately pull me aside, even if she saw it with a friend and a friend is here. She will grab her friend. She will grab me. She'll tell me she needs to talk to me. We go into a private room, shut the door, and she'll be like a little nervous to tell me, but then she spits it out. And I'm like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. And I'll explain what you saw. Or, you know, I'm human. My kids have screen time and oftentimes a little too much screen time. But the point is to not.
Can we just humanize being human?
Yeah. Thanks. I'm having.
Right? I mean, seriously, can we just humanize it? Can we all just like be okay with being human and that there is no such thing as perfection? My daughter is the first to say progress, not perfection. Like, let's all embrace that.
Yeah, I agree. I just feel so grateful. I know the first couple of times Eliza had come to me with some things that you wish your child never saw or heard. I was so grateful that I had to pause, and I always recommend everybody pause for a couple of minutes, but I had to pause to remind myself how grateful I was that she came to me and that she was honest and she didn't let it eat at her or make her feel bad about herself. God, if we could all just do that for our kids.
Right? And it's because you created this foundation with Eliza. This foundation that like you're a safe place to go, this foundation that you're there and open to it and that she won't be judged, right? That you are there to see and hear her and support her and help her understand and work through it together.
Let's move on to just a couple of tips. How do you suggest people, because like you said, people don't have the building blocks. A lot of us don't know where to even begin.
They don't. And to me, like, one of the core, there are these two questions that I love to ask in any conversation that I have. And whether that's with my daughter or with a 5-year-old or, you know, with a spouse or with a stranger, whoever it is, it doesn't matter who it is. There are these two really, to me, powerful questions that I love to ask. And I would love to share them with you because I think starting in any conversation from this awareness already is really powerful for everybody involved.
Let's hear them.
So the first question to ask yourself is this a question I really want the answer to? So when you stop and ask yourself, especially if you're talking, like, think about if you're talking to your teens, maybe about, you know, again, we've touched on sex, so let's take that, right? If they're sexually active, you want to ask them about it. Do you really want the answer to it? Are you really ready for whatever the answer is? And to be there for them in a place of support that these are the decisions they had. And, you know, knowing that like, this is their truth. Like, are you really ready for the answer? And if you're not really ready for an answer, just don't ask the question. As much as you may want to know, if somebody gives you an answer and you're not ready for it and your reaction is defensiveness or attacking, you have just done everything you can to essentially destroy the connection and trust that you had.
So a way to figure out if you're ready for the answer to the question and whether you should ask it in the first place is, how am I going to respond if my daughter tells me that she's not, if you're going to freak out on her because you're going to do a hell of a lot more harm by responding in an unsupportive manner than you will if you just...
And you'll harm your daughter, you'll harm yourself, and you'll harm that relationship. And you'll likely harm your child's relationship with other people, right? So that's the first one. Is this a question I'm ready for the answer to? The second question is this a question I'm willing to answer myself? So again, if you ask, we'll take in this case, right? Maybe you're dating somebody and you're like, you know, what's your previous past with, you know, sexual partners or drugs or, you know, whatever it is you're curious about. Are you prepared to answer that same question? And again, if you're not, is it really fair to ask somebody to step up with that level of vulnerability to share with you if you are not willing to meet them back with a similar level of vulnerability?
I even find that second question a hell of a lot more powerful than the first.
And I totally agree. And that's why it comes second. Not because like you start with the other one and then this one, if you're not willing to answer it, like stop in your tracks. And that's also this amazing opportunity to check in and reflect with yourself about why. Or is there some work? Are you connected to yourself in this, right?
Yeah.
Why am I not willing to answer this? Like, what's behind that? Is it, is it expectations? Are they my expectations of myself? Are they outside expectations? What's sort of underlying that?
Well, and what came up for me when you said the second question there is shame. Like, am I going to feel ashamed if I have to tell somebody about my background? And if I am coming from a place of shame when that question comes up, does that mean I'm going to shame my daughter?
Yep.
Because
isn't it amazing?
Yeah, like hold on a second here. I mean, shut the front door, the back door, and all the windows, because
shut the windows.
Yeah, no, this is super powerful. And I didn't see, I mean, I totally could see that first question coming, but the second question.
And it's amazing. And if you notice with any conversation that you're in, even if it's with a stranger, just starting to reflect on yourself with these questions, the awarenesses that we start to have about ourselves and maybe our own comfort zones and our own beliefs, and who those beliefs, if you're talking to your daughter and you're thinking like, am I going to feel shamed? And then the next question to yourself may be, well, why would I feel that shame? Is that my emotion, or is that something that was put upon me that I should feel shame for, whatever that is? And it's like this doorway into this deeper understanding of yourself, and really connection to every other human being, not even other human beings, right? Connection to the world, connection to nature, connection to everything.
Yeah, and when we said at the beginning of this conversation that these principles and suggestions and tips can go for any relationship, not just parent-child relationships, but I'm looking back upon friendship.
I refer a lot to connected communication and connection. And I'm speaking that true, I don't even know the words for it, full body, real connection, right? Like authentic connection. Yeah. We all have people in our life, friends, etc., relationships that are more superficial, for lack of a better term, right? That are more surface, and they serve their purpose. Acquaintances are fantastic people. Everybody doesn't have to be your best friend, and you don't have to have these, super deep, powerful conversations with everybody. But with whoever you're talking to, when you approach with the awareness of these questions in your mind, it will just completely shift your awareness around how you're communicating and how you're connecting both with others and yourself.
Well, and it builds a level of trust. If we approach every conversation and every relationship, no matter its depth, with these two questions that you just brought up, you can easily see whether you're building the level of trust and building the safe place or not.
It gives you feedback too, is this a relationship that I really want to be a piece of? Because if you're finding yourself saying no to both of those questions in a relationship, it's possible it's not really an aligned relationship, and that's okay, right? The only relationship that we have for our own lives is with ourselves. Right? So in the end, that's the relationship, that's the connection where the bulk of our attention needs to go, because from that place, that's how we are able to open ourselves to connect to others. But, relationships, they come and go, they wax and wane, and that's fine. It's not always comfortable, right? It really sucks when you have a great friend and things fall apart. And, I understand all of that. And it's not to say that these aren't real and these emotions aren't really real. And not every relationship serves us for our whole life. And that's okay. And frankly, it's normal.
And some are flat out toxic.
Yeah, exactly.
We've got to be able to call them for what they are and put up real boundaries for ourselves. Absolutely.
Yes. Wow. Boundaries is another one of my favorite subjects. And Lord knows we could talk for hours on that one too.
Aren't they beautiful? Beautiful boundaries.
And the thing is,
for you to make beautiful boundaries.
Well, and the thing is, right, when we're talking about connected communication with our kids, one of the things we are also really teaching and helping them to do is to develop healthy boundaries, right? So when you start that, when your kids are, 6, 8, 10, 12, whatever, and showing them how to build boundaries and that you respect their boundaries, you are actually creating for them the whole model of what it can look like for other people. So that when things do come into their life that aren't aligned, that don't feel good, they're able to hold their boundaries because they've already explored what those are, right? They have some ideas around it, and they're able to hold those boundaries and, remain true to themselves and protect themselves from,
and this
let's
is
face it, shit that comes into your life.
Yeah, and this is another generational difference. I think back to when I was a child, and was I ever given even permission to have boundaries? Or was I looked upon as a child who was less than because of my age?
Permission to have boundaries, permission to have consent, right? To give consent. How often are we not asking kids for their consent and things?
Yeah.
A lot for a lot of people.
Awesome.
And all of that stuff builds up then to how we react as adults. Yeah.
I already love this podcast and conversation. I'm sitting here just thinking, so you're going to have to keep talking. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing is, it's these simple things, right? The building blocks of connected communication are really simple ideas. And from that, I like to think of them. I love to cook. I think, Jessica, I love to cook.
Yeah.
And the way that I cook is, I love to have a recipe, and I like to look at the recipe, and then I like to do whatever the fuck I want, because that's how I work in the world. Right. So it's like an idea, but I think of these building blocks of connected communication as the pantry staples, right? The stuff that we always have them. And once we've sort of internalized these ideas, we're working at all of our interactions from some of these building blocks. Then we have this basic tool set to build connection and communication throughout life that we can keep checking back in with and sort of see how am I doing on these things,
Right. So do you consider those two questions the first building block?
They sort of go, it's funny. I kind of think of it as what I picture when I think of it is almost like a pyramid. And I feel like it was the Aztec pyramids that had the steps up them. Is that correct? Do you know?
I think.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think they all do. But are you thinking Mayan culture?
Mayan.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, right. Those ones where you see the picture where it has the very defined steps.
It's very defined.
So I actually have something, I refer to it as the 7 gets of communication. I consider those the building blocks, right? That foundation of the pyramid. Yeah. And I really think of those 2 questions almost as the tools that take us up the steps of it to connection. So I think of it as basically a connection pyramid, because to me, connection, oh my God, connection is my passion, right? And the tools that go into it are communication and conversation, because let's face it, not all communication is conversation. We communicate in many different ways. And those are some of the tools of connection. And there's, many more. But I think of this as some of the, these 7 gets that I talk about in other things as kind of the base of this pyramid, and those 2 questions as the steps going up it, because that's what takes you to the different levels of connection. Does that make sense? Can you envision that?
I can, yes. I've actually drawn it on the paper here. So
I have a slide in one of my programs that actually shows, I make it into the visual because I just feel like it's a really powerful visual. For me, it resonates. We're all different, but for me, it works. So since it's my program, I get to make the rules.
Isn't that the funnest part about that? I love how many people are finding their power and their voices and finding their contributions to the world. I think it's awesome.
I've noticed a lot of that in this past year. I referred to, the pandemic as the forced pause, because I feel like for humanity in general, it's really forced people to sort of stop, really sort of take a deeper look at themselves and how connected they are with themselves and with other people in their life, because suddenly, all the busy, particularly here on the East Coast, right? Everything is busy all the time. Go, 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 go. And all the busy came to a screeching halt. And suddenly people were sort of, looking in the mirror with themselves. And I've noticed a huge amount of shift for a lot of people in really coming into themselves and claiming, right? Claiming their voice, allowing themselves to be seen and heard in a way that they weren't before, because it's sort of, I feel like it's really just kind of opened this really amazing door for a lot of people. That said, I'm not saying it's been all rainbows and unicorns by any means, because there's a lot of it that's really sucked, but.
Right. A lot of it's been really hard. But I mean, the pandemic.
I am not into toxic positivity.
Me neither. This is what got you to create your course about this, right? Was now you can't do massage because you're in lockdown, and being one-on-one in a room with people during a pandemic when we're just figuring out how this thing works.
100%.
Not cool.
Yep.
Awesome. So
I realized, and especially as I watched other people in my life really sort of struggling with this. And my daughter and I, as you know, Jessica, we have this amazing relationship. And people ask me all the time, oh my gosh, how do you two have this amazing relationship? What do you do? What are your secrets? You know, all of these kinds of things. And I was like, who am I kidding? Like, I can help people with this. And the part I love the most about it, Jessica, is that my daughter actually helped me build the course. So it is teenager approved. I love that about it. Literally, she and I sat down and talked about it. This course that I have a course called Connected Communication, talking with your kids or anyone before shit gets real. This is what I'm working on. And I said, you know, like, I really value your input. Hint, this is one way to talk to your kids, value their input. So we really got into, I was like, well, how do you want to be asked into a conversation? One of the things that we talk about in this 8-week program is, I call it the conversation invitation. How do you even invite somebody in so that you're starting from a place of true invitation versus, you know, here's how you don't invite somebody else. We need to talk. I don't know anybody who, when they hear that, their whole body doesn't immediately go into fight or flight, like, oh my God, right? Like, immediately we start thinking doom or gloom. I need to talk to you about something. Yeah. Like, run away.
No, thank you. What did she say? How does she like to be invited into a conversation?
She and I had a whole conversation about it. And in fact, I made it into like one of the weeks of my course. Literally the first week is about the conversation invitation, because the way I designed the course was that it's for 2 people. But clearly one person is probably going to buy it, right? So once you have it, then you need to invite somebody into it. That's the first step, right? And so we really talk about things that do work and things that don't work. In fact, I even include basically, you know, a sample invitation that you can just use if you are not feeling comfortable, right? If you want to slide it under the door to it's a place to start.
Right. Absolutely. And everyone's at a different level of communication and connectedness with their children and in all of their different relationships.
Well, it's just like we were saying at the beginning. We hear you need to talk to your kids, but then nobody really gives you any guidelines or any tools, any basics. And really that's what my daughter and I came up with, was what can this look like?
How have you found, since creating this course about connected communication, and I think that you've probably always strive to practice this with your daughter. I've noticed through what I know about you that you've always been really incredible, or tried to be really incredible. I know we all fail at some points and to some extents, but since you created the course,
at some point we all yell at our kids.
Yeah, totally. But has it helped you? And
again, humaning.
Yeah, humaning.
I am so grateful, because my relationship with her has really been amazing for as long as I can remember. And that's because that's been my goal from the get-go, right? Like, it's from very, very conscious decisions. So sometimes people are like, well, you have it all together and it's so easy. I'm like, this is not without work. Yeah. Like, we work at this every day. Yeah. And it's so easy to look at other people and think they've got it all together and I don't. And here's the thing, I want everybody listening to remember, everybody's working at it. What you're seeing and like what happens that you don't see are never the same thing.
And people don't want to share their hardest struggles and their biggest failures. That's a little too vulnerable for the connectedness that is social media. So you're not going to see.
Yeah, for a lot of people.
I screamed at my daughter.
Right.
And later had to go back on my knees and beg for her forgiveness. I'm not going to tell you that. Mm-hmm. You don't get to know that. Well, now everybody knows that.
And the funny thing is, right, sometimes I do share that stuff because I feel like, you know, for me, authenticity is one of my core values. And so is like transparency. And so I feel like because so often what I share in social media or out in the world is about this amazing relationship, right? I really want people to know that while overall it's amazing, yeah, sometimes she and I, fight it out and both slam the door and go and cry in the corner, right? We are human too, again, humanizing human. And so I am willing to be vulnerable with that kind of stuff out in the world because I think it's so powerful and important to see that is real for other people and relatable.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like it happens to everybody.
I love that. I said this to you when I canceled our first recording of this podcast because I was having a hell of a day and the core values thing came up. And it's funny because I just recently went through a course myself on how to define my core values, which was...
Oh, I love that. I do that with clients also.
It was unreal. And we did, and because of the impact that it had on me and the clarity that it brought to my relationships and to my childhood and my adulthood and my motherhood and just everything, I invited the creator of the course that I took on our podcast. And that was just a few episodes ago, actually, episode 34, if anyone wants to go back to that one to learn how... I don't even have the words.
It's life-changing. It's life-changing.
Life-changing.
Understanding these core pieces of yourself. And we're talking like your true core values, not should values, not the values that you think you're supposed to have, but like when you get to your individual core values.
And how to...
it really will. It will change your life and the way you interact with yourself and other people. And that right there is life-changing because you're interacting from that place of truth with yourself. Is sort of woo and silly as that sounds for some people, like that's the fucking truth of it, That
is the truth of it. And when you are living in alignment with your core values, everything flows so much better. In the course that I went through to help me define my core values, I was also able to differentiate core values from core needs.
Yes. It's amazing. It's such amazing work. I love it.
Amazing work.
When I did my body mind coach training, we did that. And, it's a tool that I use now. And I'm trying to think if I've done it with my daughter yet. We've done some of those types of things. And one of the things I'm sort of playing with is how to make that feel a little more accessible to kids.
Right.
Because I don't know about the training that you did. The way I did it feels like a little, she could probably do it, but it's not accessible even in the fact that it feels like interesting and fun, right? Because let's face it, who doesn't like fun? And particularly teens are like, don't make me do this shit unless it's fun.
If I would have had someone walk me through these sorts of things when I was a young teenager, right? I can't imagine the difference it would have made in guiding me and the choices that I had come to make. Because that time of your life, let's face it, your prefrontal cortex is not operating at all. And so you need guidance.
No, it's not.
Yeah, no, it's like scientifically is
even as you're pushing it away. Yeah, even as you're pushing it away, that's what the true craving is, right? Exactly. Is guidance, is support in that.
So tell us a little bit more just about the course that you built about connected communication, and tell us all the things. How can people find you? Where do they get in touch with you?
I have a website, LorineHoffer.com. Do you want me to spell that out, or will you put that somewhere?
I'll put all of this in.
Awesome. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I actually have a free Facebook group. It's private, so you have to ask to join, just because the idea is for it to be a space where if people want to be vulnerable, they can. So it's not a public group, it's a private group, but anybody is welcome to join. It is called Life Connected. There's a few different ways that people can work with me if that sounds interesting and feels like something you want to explore. Like I said, I have the connected communication, talking with your kids or anyone before shit gets real. And a quick aside, you asked me about, building it and has it changed? And I'm going to be honest, Jessica, the first person who I took through this program was myself.
Love it.
I literally went through my own program myself to deepen my connection with self before I did with anybody else. The thing is, you don't have to have a partner, right? Or maybe you get it, and then who you thought might do it with you is like, not right now. You can totally go through it yourself, and once you buy it, it's yours to keep. So you could do it with multiple people also. So that is an 8-week program. It's really aimed at parents and, teens and tweens. But as we've talked about, you can use it with anyone. Teenager approved. I actually made a stamp that is like on the content that says teenager approved, because I just think it is so cool that my teenager wanted to do this with me,
And that speaks volumes to the quality of the program. Whoever asked a teen for their help in creating something to help communication with a teen, instead of just telling them, we're going to do it this way. Hold on a second, let's back up and ask.
Yeah, instead of deciding what it should look like. And then I work one-on-one with people too. I actually do some coaching with teens as well. I work with adults. I work with all kinds of people doing one-on-one stuff. So if something like that feels more interesting or aligned to you, you can reach out and we can discuss what that could look like. I also have, just to the side, I also have like this little accountability group that's really about, I don't know about you, I started it really out of my own need. It's called Intentional 12, and it's really about claiming 12 minutes a day that are just for you, because so often it feels like I want to do this or I want to do that, but I have all these other things to do and I can't find the time. How often do we say I can't find the time? It's like claim 12 minutes a day. Why
did you decide on 12 minutes? Why is it not 10 or 15?
You know what? I totally listened to my gut, Jessica. 12 felt right. That is what I am a very intuitive person, and 12 really felt good, right? Like it's a little more than 10. And the thing is, you can do it for longer if you want. This past summer, it really came out of this past summer. I do monthly intentions. So I'll set a few intentions for myself every month. They're usually daily intentions. And one of them was to read for 12 minutes a day. I don't know why I picked 12 again. That's what my body was like, do 12. I was like, yes, body, I listen. I have piles of books that I want to read. I am traditionally not a really active reader because I have a hard time sitting still for very long. So I was like, I can surely sit still for 12 minutes. In 1 month, I finished 3 books that had been sitting on my shelf literally for years, unfinished, and read 3 more.
Wow.
By doing it for 12 minutes a day. Like opens the door. And it's like, again, right? It's like a building block. There were days where certainly I read for more than 12 minutes, but it was also that piece, you mentioned one of my favorite words earlier, permission. It was that piece of giving myself permission to do this thing that I wanted to without it feeling heavy, without feeling like, well, if I sit down to read, I need to do it for an hour. I need, without creating these expectations around it for myself. Within the group, like I tend to mix it up each month, what my 12 minutes will be each month. There are people who are in the group who have like the same intention every month and they do it. It's really just kind of, we're there kind of for accountability to each other. And sometimes, I'm going to be honest, sometimes my posts in there like, I have not done my 12 minutes in a week. This is my real talk. I'm really struggling with it this month. And this is why I think I may be struggling with it. Bits of coaching and support in there around it too, but it's really designed to just be like a low-key, easy way to start claiming time for ourselves.
I love it because I'm pretty sure that I spend 12 minutes many times a day doing nothing.
If we can find 12 minutes to scroll on Facebook,
right?
And maybe that's what we want to spend it on. And that's cool. It's a judgment-free zone, right? But it's really about being intentional, which is why the group is called Intentional 12, about what you're choosing to do with the 12 minutes. And it can be anything you want. It is a judgment-free zone.
I'm going to spell out your website. It's lorinehoffer.com. It's LORINEHOFFER.com. Just in case people don't have a second to go check out the show notes so they can find you, because I think that the judgment-free support alone is invaluable.
Yes. I feel like we live in a world that judges a lot, and I really, one of my big intentions is to create safe space for anybody in my life.
Yeah.
A place of no judgment. And in fact, a number of my friends come to me and they're like, I come to you because I know you won't judge me.
So we try to remember at the end of each podcast to ask our guests 3 questions. Are you ready?
Oh my gosh, I didn't know there were going to be 3 questions. I'm on the spot. Okay, I'll give it a whirl.
You're going to love these ones though. Okay, ready?
Okay.
What book are you currently reading?
I am currently finishing up a book called The Joy of Genius. It is by Gay Hendricks, who also wrote The Big Leap and Conscious Luck. All of those books are amazing. We could talk about those for an hour. Oh my gosh, they're incredible books.
Question number 2, and I have a feeling that there's going to be a lot here, but how do you practice self-care?
The first way I practice self-care is by redefining what is so often called self-care.
Right. I love it.
To me, self-care is not going and getting a massage or a facial or doing self-care is truly an everyday practice of listening to and connecting to my body and honoring and respecting what it says it needs, right? What it needs. So some days that's taking a nap. Some days that's taking a walk. I cook, almost every day. I don't eat out a lot. And I tend to cook sort of nutrient dense food, but even the process of cooking to me is self-care because it feels very meditative. Some days it is releasing people who are no longer serving me because they are pushing my boundaries. So self-care to me is really just about, like I said, listening to, honoring my body in its full state.
What advice do you have for?
I am not an advice giver. I am about giving tools. I'm about giving support. I don't give advice. The closest thing I give to advice is when people are pregnant and getting ready to birth, and they're like, "What's your biggest advice? Do you really want it?" Right? Because I don't really give advice. They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, there's three things that, as especially if it's a first child who's coming into your life, right? The first one is, if you would like to breastfeed, then find a lactation consultant who will come to your house and support you in the environment that you will be mostly nursing in, because that will make all the difference. The second one is, I am a huge fan of Dr. Harvey Karp, Happiest Baby on the Block. Okay. So I'm like, read that book while you're pregnant, watch the video. I think the video is still out. I mean, it was 14 years ago, right, when I had it. The third, and I feel like this may actually be the most potent one of the three. Don't get involved in what I call the mom petition. Do not spend all your time comparing your child to everybody else's child and deciding that where everybody else's child is where your child should be. Meet your child where they are and look for progress, right? You want to see developmental progress, but kids do not all develop on the same schedule. And comparing your child to Judy down the street is not going to give you an adequate or an appropriate sort of idea of where your child should be. So I've always referred to that as the mom petition, right? The sooner you are willing to surrender whatever your idea of control and what your child should be, the more delightful your life with your child as who they are will be.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a minute to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend. Visit naturalmothernetwork.com to learn more or get in touch with us. Thanks for listening and have a great week.